I feel like we should back up just a little bit because God forbid someone comes into this and it's like, what are they talking about? So we read the
We're talking about Walken.
Now we're talking about the movie.
Walken fell through some ice. What is happening? I don't. What is?
Right.
The bad news for the war effort.
Oh, shut up! You're just keeping me alive. Letting you die slower.
Oh,
Thank you, Jerry. I'm touched. Fuck that. We just do the prophecy.
oh man, I should have watched The Prophecy. Actually, I was. So, all right, you wanted to like bring everybody back up to speed. So we're gonna do. So, we've episode 27, Long Short Drink episode 27, where we are joined by none other Twinkie himself, and we are wrapping up the Dead Zone book club. This is the last episode that we're just going to kind of devote the episode to catching up with Twinkie, and we'll spiral into Dead Zone, and we'll probably talk about the movie a little bit, and then we'll talk about a little more Twinkie stuff, and it'll just be a normal long walk, short drink, clusterfuck conversation that just goes in circles. And if you didn't join us for minute one, you're screwed. So I don't know why you would just come in an hour into this conversation. But if you did, hit back and go back to minute one, because otherwise you're not going to know dick what we're talking about.
Episode one.
Yeah, episode one. Yeah, I don't mean minute one. Shit, did I say minute one? No.
That's all right.
I mean all the way back to the like 517 hours worth of conversations. And start over. This is the like episode 27, 1 hour, 3 minute, 50 seconds in. Really? That's where you decided to start this podcast? What the fuck is wrong with you? At least start the whole at the episode beginning. Like, go back to something. Anyways, now that you've caught up to where we are now, that took some doing, didn't it?
That was well said.
Yeah.
You can find the show on your favorite podcast service. I use iTunes.
I use Google Play Music.
I use Stitcher, actually.
Yeah, there you go. So
And all the kids these days use YouTube. So
that's right.
It's
All of them
available.
watch on Red.
in YouTube. Yep, YouTube and YouTube Red. Man, YouTube Red is where it's at. That is $10 well spent. let me
Yeah.
tell you.
And actually, if you're hearing this on a podcast and you'd like to see what the hell guys that sound like this look like, you can watch live broadcasts or archives thereof on YouTube with video. Just search for Long Walk, Short Drink on YouTube.
You can see Dave's
Makeshift strap shirt right
yeah,
now.
yeah, Dave's ghetto strap shirt. This is like
Out of here.
so I didn't have any strap shirts, so I'm just gonna roll my sleeves up and just make a strap shirt. It's like it's a wide strap shirt. Look at how wide my straps are.
I know if I had a mullet, I would be
Shit.
dirt right now.
Oh man.
hey, I'm getting on Amazon as soon as we're done and ordering some strap shirts. So
Oh, get some strap shirts. Now there's a difference though. You can't get the hipstery ones that are like all the like that are printed and supposed to be worn as like tank tops, you know?
oh no, just undershirts.
You
Yeah.
gotta get undershirts and you just wear the undershirts. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Like don't get those hipstery like rainbow ones or
It's way too expensive too. You can just get
Yeah.
some cheap under- yeah.
no, you just get cheap undershirts, especially
Just roll
skinny
your
guys like
sleeves
yeah. Or you could do you could do the ghetto version and just roll your sleeves up of your favorite t-shirt and then
This is like the Bono 1987 version of the strap.
turn any shirt into a strap shirt by following Dave's method here.
I'm gonna make an instructional video.
Oh man, there's our first sketch.
Dave makes a strap shirt.
Yep. We should start making YouTube content. I thought about that, Dave. Like quick.
Yeah, we can do that. I guess I
quick
made that
YouTube
video
content.
for the Dave's Digs, the unboxing and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I make videos for a living, and
Oh yeah.
we should
absolutely.
make videos.
Yeah.
Uh,
So if you're joining us, this is Dave and I have talked through the entire Dead Zone book. Hopefully you went back and did the 517 hours and
if not, you can find it. We're gonna publish the book club as
a whole once this
yeah.
episode airs.
Well, this will be the final. Well, if this is a focused enough conversation about the movie, we'll
It'll be
excise it
focused enough.
into. But you can find that on LWSDpod.com. There'll be a playlist or something where you can just go through the discussion at your own leisure. Download
any of your favorite major podcast platforms, or search Long Walk Short Drink or LWSD Pod, either one of those. You can also subscribe and tweet with us on Twitter at LWSD Pod. Subscribe on YouTube at LWSD Pod, Long Walk Short Drink. You can search Long Walk Short Drink, where we have started broadcasting live every recording session. So you can watch us live, actually see the episodes. Like this episode's not going to air for a month, right? Like,
yeah, we're behind right now.
Yeah.
And watch, keep an eye on the Twitter feed for those live links as they happen, and we'll try to. I mean, we could do a better job, I guess, of saying like in a couple days we'll do this.
What I need to do is update the branding so that it says like, new episodes launch and live recordings on YouTube, and
but we'll figure it out. But we're glad you're hearing this now, wherever you are.
Absolutely. So what we're gonna do is like I said, we're just gonna catch up with Twinkie a little bit and get his reaction to the Dead Zone book. He's finished the book. We've all also watched the movie. I might bring up the Wikipedia page for the television show. That's about as far as I got with that. We're lucky I got the movie done, honestly. Like, geez, I can't believe I wasted all that time trying to get that soundboard to work, and it sounds like shit.
Palmer has built this technical empire on his strap shirt bare shoulders, and he had a setback today, but he will not be deterred.
No,
he will not be the turd.
Or the turd. Yeah. Neither one of those.
This is also a good episode in some ways to catch on, or to come to if you haven't read the book or whatever, because we're going to talk about the movie, which encompasses the whole story. And Twinkie's never read a Stephen King book before this, and so in some ways it's a good.
I'm excited to touch on that. Yeah. I really feel like the movie is like a perfect Cliff Notes for the book. Like if you want just the tone of the book, like what the book is going for.
It's amazing you say that, because I have I have some tidbits from watching the 2006 DVD version. One of which is that David Cronenberg picked the script that he did, which is I think by now I gotta say, but I've got it right in front of me. No, I don't. So the script anyway that they went for, whose name the script writer's name I'll find. Cronenberg picked of 5 scripts that were written because this one he felt was the closest to the tone of the book.
So the screenplay was by Jeffrey Boehm.
Thank you. Yes,
nice. You're welcome.
So Mr. Boehm was one of four other screenwriters to tackle this project, and it was chosen because it captured the tone of the book. And also the other piece of that is that during this production, Cronenberg came up with this mantra for adapting novels, which is in order to be faithful to the book, you have to betray the book. So it's interesting that you say that it captures the spirit without everything.
there are a lot of differences, and some of them are really kooky. Like the Weizsäck Institute, that really threw me for a loop. Like what the whole point of that was, and why did there need, like the Dr. Weizsäck was great. I thought he was a great, but why did he need his own institute? And it was weird because it's like that's all it was talked about was just that one shot where it says the Weizsäck Institute,
Oh, that's right. And then it surprised me that was more of like it seemed like somebody's home more so than a hospital. There's something to know about this that I don't have great research into. And to full disclosure, I know it through another radio show podcast that comes out of Milwaukee from Mark Borchert and Gabe Van Handel called Cinema Fireside. And Mark is of American movie fame for those who might vaguely recognize that name. He was talking about because he's well versed in Cronenberg films. He was saying that this movie and films in general, but this movie's what he called a tax shelter movie. So it's like people who have money towards the end of a tax year need to spend it, and so they got investors at a time of the year where it's kind of scraped together quickly, like people looking to get rid of money as tax write-offs. and this movie takes place in like the winter and stuff. So I made a note early on too that it almost felt like a television movie at first. Like the production values were pretty low in some respects, even though it was a Paramount release.
Super rushed, and I couldn't tell if it felt. Did you guys think it felt rushed?
In terms of the pace of it, like
and I couldn't tell if it felt rushed just because I knew the book, and the book had been. Because like King is just like exposition. Like let's think about why they're doing this. Like let's really analyze it and let's spend some pages really figuring out why this is happening. And I understand you don't get that with the movie. Like one of my notes is like all of the changes they made were smart choices, like one of like. And not to get too ahead of this conversation in the movie, but like one to make that point, I thought when they introduced what in the book was the Craig character, but in the movie is the Chris character, the like boy that he tutors.
Yes, yeah.
In the book, he's graduating high school, and it's his senior class that gets roasted alive in the Christie's restaurant, right?
Right.
And when they changed that storyline to just being that like young boy, I was like, oh, well, they switched it to a boy probably because there's no way they would have gotten through the MPAA where they torched a bunch of 18-year-olds in a restaurant, like 17 and 18-year-olds in a restaurant. And then like 10 minutes later, they show the flash scene where you see like 8-year-olds like sinking to the bottom of the river. And I'm just like, oh my God, fucking Cronenberg. Like he's ballsy in his movies. Like, Stephen King of movies where he's just like, I'm going to put your nose right fucking in it. And we're going to sit in there for a little while and you're going to really get a whiff of what we're dealing with here before I'm going to let you go. Like, I know that sounds crude, but if you like, wait till you read Tommyknockers. Like when you get to Tommyknockers, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That Stephen King, and you've already read stuff where he does that. It just doesn't seem as intense. But like Tommyknockers was when I got to that was one where I was just like, Jesus Christ, like I need to take a fucking shower after that. But if those last 20 pages weren't in there, this book would not be the same book. So
Twinkie, let's get your Palmer and I have had many shows and many hours over which we discussed the nuances and details of this book.
Right.
I know you recently finished it and then you watched the movie to talk about it with us tonight. And this is your first Stephen King book. If you would just kind of take us through, like, what was it like? What did you expect from what you'd heard of Stephen King from the podcast? Like, how did it all unfold to you? How did you feel about the adaptation? Feel free to just, go on and on. I mean, we'll interject, believe me.
Yeah, so whether this is right or wrong, my approach to movies doesn't necessarily have to do with actors and actresses. I don't necessarily...
Wrong.
Yeah. I enjoy certain actors and actresses, but a director, I'll go see a movie that I'm not necessarily interested in subject matter-wise if I trust the director. For example, I will watch Chris Nolan videotape his kid's baseball game.
Yeah.
Because I love what Chris Nolan does, and I love his approach. It's cerebral. It somehow satisfies me. A lot of people view it as cold sometimes, but for whatever reason, I connect to that approach to filmmaking. Now, to reset
Who
back,
are these people that I was trying to hold back? Who says cold? Are you kidding me?
well, I just
the filmmaker.
Yeah,
box their ears.
Yeah. Well, I think some of his dialogue comes off to some as a little structured or too structured.
I think dialogue. I think that we are in an age of visual directors, and none of them are that strong with dialogue. Like it as far as like, I can't say realistic dialogue, but just the way their characters talk don't match the type of movie that they're making. Kevin Smith is a great example of that. Like his none of his characters talk like you would expect them to. In dealing with such real situations that his characters deal with in their movies, in his movies.
Sure.
I'm talking about like Jersey trilogy, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah, it's like
So-
overly stylized, but
yeah.
So a director that I haven't necessarily or didn't like, I didn't necessarily go out of my way to watch his stuff. I've found that I've really enjoyed it in Cronenberg. And honestly, it's more of his recent stuff. I don't know a lot of his back catalog, frankly, just because I was never really interested in his style. But like Eastern Promises is one of my, I mean, I probably say this about a lot of movies I like, but Eastern Promises is just a fantastic movie with Viggo Mortensen. And just brutal and but yet tactful, and I don't know, it's a really great movie. And then of course A History of Violence is another recent one that I really enjoyed, again with Viggo Mortensen. But so I've never really searched out Cronenberg, and frankly when I think Cronenberg, I almost think horror movies as a default kind of. I need to put this, my mind needs to open a drawer and put it in a folder, and I almost think horror movie. And I'm realizing now, of course, that's incorrect, but you know, just my initial reaction was a little bit leery, like, is he going to take this movie and turn it into jump scares and more outward horror, where I'm reading the book, and the book is about inside horror as much as it is any sort of exterior horror like in a traditional movie. So my initial, I just had a couple reactions that I sent you guys, and I'll just read those, and then you know, some of them were joking, but like most movies, just a lot of subtleties are lost. You know, we talked about, or you talked about the amount of pages he spends at the gambling wheel at the beginning.
Oh yeah, the Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, and there's a subtlety in that, a foreshadowing, et cetera, that is completely dismissed in the movie. And again, that's not a criticism necessarily, because the movie has to move along, and it's already an hour and 45 minutes. But you do lose some subtleties throughout that. And of course, characters change and names change, and all those are to be expected. But just like the tutoring you talked about, the tutoring again was, and I don't have it in front of me, was just pages and pages of exposition about why he was tutoring him and how he tutored him and the method he was using.
Right.
And
as a former educator, like I found all of that stuff, like one, accurate, and two, fascinating, because it really gave you an insight of an educator in the 70s and what that was like, you know? And,
sure. Yeah, and he spends a great deal of time in that in a later chapter, where in a movie, if you're watching that, that would just bring that thing to a plod. And, you know, you would lose, people be passing out in the, you know, like, what is happening? Why are we stopped for 20 minutes in this movie to talk about his ability to bring this out? So my other one was, of course, Chris Walken, by God. We've covered that. Yeah. And then
for listeners, go look at the YouTube. But Twinkie just did like a little shoulder thing and like a head twitch that said everything he wanted to say about Chris Walken.
Oh man,
I mean, people love a lot of things about Pulp Fiction, but Chris Walken in Pulp Fiction, to me, is just, I don't know. It's like if you had a cupcake and then it had your favorite frosting on it, and it was your favorite cupcake, and on top of frosting was your favorite sprinkles. And then somebody came in and put like a cherry on top of your favoriteest thing. You would just be like, how can this possibly get any better? And that's what Chris Walken is to that movie. It's like
one scene, tour de force.
Just,
yeah.
Oh my God. And then my last one was, there's some sweet Buicks in this movie. I mean, there are some Buicks in this movie that are stunning, but that goes to my actual point of, there was some pretty dodgy production values. I mean, it is 1983. I get that, but like there's a squib shot where they're going to the Dodd house, and like, again, not from the book, the mom comes out with a gun and
that
shoots
shit
him.
was totally unintentional or unnecessary.
Yeah, and he shoots back, and you can see in her shirt like the squib pod as it, you know. So, like you guys mentioned,
what do you think that was? Did you think they just felt like they needed to like ramp up that action, or like? Because up to that point, they were doing a really good job of
Yeah.
building like a psychological thriller. Like
Right.
this is just like a suspense. It does not need to be action. This, even in the book,
Right.
that's not an action scene. Like that's
Right. No, and even like the way he kills himself, you know, you can tell it. Cronenberg is trying to amp up the intensity as the story goes along.
I think that was more graphic than the book, and I thought it was graphic in the book where he's like, I didn't think it was possible, but he slit his own throat. And then in the movie, it's like, let's just turn that up to 11.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, I don't necessarily there's a part of me that understands why you need to do that in a movie. Film is visual. You need to create visual momentum for a movie like this, which is definitely just point A, point B. The couple flash forwards or potential flash forwards that we get. But I thought for sure we'd like flash back to the hockey thing as a kid, or flash around to Stilson when he's giving a speech. We flash back to him and his encounter with the dog. Or I guess I just thought we would see more movement. And I realize it's 1983, and that isn't how films were made in 1983.
Right.
But I think the movie could have benefited from some of that. Here's who this person is being presented to you now, but here's who they really are. How is that all going to culminate in scene 3 or act 3? So there were certainly some pieces that I felt like would have benefited from like a Tarantino treatment, if you will. Some jumping around, some maybe confusing the audience member just a little bit to make them ask some questions. But I looked, IMDb says the budget was $10 million, which I'm not really sure what that means in 1983 dollars, but that still can't be a lot for, like you said, a Paramount production. Now, maybe it is. I don't really know. But so that's kind of my general thought of the movie. If you had, specific questions, I enjoyed it.
So as your first Stephen King book, like let's take a step back. So first off, Dave and I decide to do this Dead Zone book club just because I happen to be at like a crossroads with my Stephen King anthology experience, and decide I'll go back. We'll do this, the Dead Zone. We'll get the sponsorship, all that stuff. Really, though, this has just been Dave. Was just the next book on Dave's chronology, and and it's really just been us talking about it as he's gone through it, right? So, you have been one of our listeners since we've started putting episodes out, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And you decided, like, first off, you and your wife went through this book together, right?
Yeah. Yep.
She
didn't quite make it to the end, but she has read it prior.
Okay.
So.
Now, did she also do the podcast listenings too, like to listen to those reflections? Or
no, she hasn't. We haven't really sat down and done any of that yet. She watched part of the movie with me, but
and I'm not saying like you had to do that. I'm just trying to get a gauge of because it's really endearing to know that wow, people really are doing like this as a book club, like we intended it to be. Like that's how we did it, but it's always just so rewarding to know that that other people are taking advantage of that. So having not this, never reading a King book or anything like that, so you make the decision to participate in this book club. What are your first initial feelings about coming into this Stephen King, coming into Stephen King's universe?
First of all, thank you, Denver Public Library, for this beautiful version.
Awesome.
Of Stephen King's The Dead Zone.
Yes, public libraries.
Yeah. I actually go to my library about once a week. I love my library. A lot of times it's movies. Sometimes it's some CDs. And then a lot of books. I'm currently also, shout out, I'm working through the Watchmen graphic novel. But
fantastic. That's a great novel.
I have really enjoyed it. There are a few things that I'm going to say the word triggered, and I don't mean that negatively necessarily, but things that have really stuck out to me, that have really prompted me to want to talk to my wonderful partner about it. And primarily is is Johnny's mother.
Yeah.
what's her name? I don't have it right in front of me right now.
Vera.
Vera, thank you. Vera Smith. We are also right now working through the original Twin Peaks show. It's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
From 1991 with David Lynch. And there's a character in that who's the mother of the deceased kind of focus of the show. Her name is Sarah Palmer.
Sorry, that's a tick I have whenever I hear that.
Oh yeah. And I actually, when I'm reading this book and I get to Vera Smith, I picture the actress Sarah Palmer, who plays Sarah Palmer in this Twin Peaks show.
Yeah, Grace Zabinski or something. Yeah.
Yeah, the religious zealotry and like conspiratorial nonsense and ridiculous just
God's coming on a UFO to take us all to to heaven.
Yeah,
you know?
made me like relive some of these ridiculous talks that I would I was raised in what I can refer to frankly as semi-cult. But these people would come and give talks and it would be like, there's Jewish people who are controlling the central banks and they will change the currency percentage rates at the time of the coming of the Antichrist.
Wait, now these talks happened in your, I'll just say cult. So in the cult that you were in.
Yeah.
People would come in and give these talks in your church.
There's it's called a fellowship center. Yeah. It's not in the actual church itself, but it's a church sponsored venue.
I've been to that fellowship center.
Yeah.
Dave's been to that fellowship center too.
Yeah. Is that where the baptisms took place and stuff? Or it's where you have the meal after?
Where you have the meal afterwards, I think.
Right. Yeah. The post. Yeah. Post-mortem.
We were there. Well, I at least know I was there after your baptism, Twinkie.
Right.
So
absolutely.
So I know exactly what building you're talking about, and they would actually bring people in who would give like the Stilson,
So this guy, and I'll say he was a position of power at the same denomination of Christian cult church in Mansfield, and he came and he was talking about all this read the Revelation and this, it means Russia, and this particular text is talking about Iran, and these forces will converge on Israel, but Israel will defend themselves, and we need to be protecting ourselves from just this over the top just fanaticism and dangerous to some degree.
That's that. I didn't even know that angle was there in that.
Yeah. Now, is this an official? Can you go to their website and this is an official stance that they take?
No,
well, of course not.
Well, of course not. But do they take? How many official stances do they take, though?
Yeah. Right. Well, very few. But I would love to share with you my experiences. No, that's not the time and place. But
I was I'm so ready.
This is exactly the time and place. I've been waiting for this to happen.
I want to know everything.
That's just so you'll have me on next time.
Yep.
No, but I can relate to that. Those types of people. If I'm honest about it, and I am trying to portray it as fairly as possible. There's a bunch of very nice people who have no part of any of that and think it's just as ridiculous as I do now, and they're still back and go to that church every week. But
at least people go and sit through it, patronize it in some way, and then leave and be like, that was bullshit.
Right.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, because you look good, you went to it, right? You're like, check off that I went to the thing.
To go, because if you don't go, then you look like, again, though, there's no official stance. What used to infuriate me is nobody has TVs.
Right.
But the church doesn't say you're not allowed to have TV.
Right. There's this kind of built-in expectation.
Yeah. But you can have a computer and watch all of the streaming television.
I would love to have conversations with people. Well, I take that back. I don't really want to have conversations with these people, but it would be interesting to have conversations to be like, how has the internet changed it? Because you can get YouTube TV for $35 a month.
Yep.
Stream it to your laptop, iPad.
And
I watch. I don't know. Whatever the kids have these days.
I know there were people in that cult that's what they did. They didn't have a TV and they didn't have cable, But by God, they had internet, like high-speed internet, and they were streaming all their television. Like they would sit for hours in front of their computer and watch television.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, you know, you're gonna.
It's so ludicrous.
It's so ridiculous. And I can remember, you know, we didn't have a TV growing up. We had a computer, but you know, I can remember going on vacation, of course, and
sure.
Family members would spend all kinds of time watching TV only because it wasn't something that was accessible all the time. And so when it was available, it was like, you know, glued to it. And then of course you don't have any sort of ability to evaluate what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate because you're not, you don't understand that not everything on TV is just like the best possible thing you could be watching at the time in front of your like 5-year-old kids, you know, or whatever it is. So, you know, there's a part of me that almost appreciates that because that's what makes me appreciate film is having or not having the ability to watch some of those things. Even now, Holly will be like, I watched this growing up, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You know, like there's chunks of my life where I don't have any experience with those TV shows.
Chunks of pop culture. Like, like that's better. You had your life,
right?
It just didn't contain large chunks of pop culture. Right. Is I think a better way to say it.
Yeah. So this Vera Smith character brings a lot of those experiences and not beliefs for sure, but I do kind of get transported back there a little bit to some of those more jarring and shocking experiences. And I can even remember at the time, maybe not like initially during that initial what people would describe as a honeymoon period, whenever you embrace a new belief where you are fully engaged in it and it pretty much accept what it is. But as time went along, sitting through those and being like, I'm like, what the fuck? You know, what is even happening right now? Like this doesn't make any sense at all. As time went along. But those Vera Smith people definitely, I think they exist in probably pretty much every religion.
Absolutely. I think they exist even in non-religions. Like, like even I think there's even versions of atheists that are just like that with atheism.
Yeah.
You know,
or conspiracy theories. Like the last time we talked, Twiki, you haven't heard this yet, but we learned of Palmer's affection for conspiracy theories, and that stuff can be completely, you know, separated
only as
from any type of
like a spectator.
Oh yeah, Palmer's not a Vera Smith of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean,
I love to learn about them, and it's just as fascinating. The people who do buy into them to me are just as fascinating as the conspiracy theory. So,
yeah, the airport I work is Denver International Airport, and has all kinds of conspiracy theories about it, and people ask me all the time.
Your brain about that, like,
yeah, it's pretty fun. But
is there a secret world, like a whole new civilization underneath your airport? Like, he can't say. He can't say. He can't say.
I blacked out there for a minute. I'm sorry, Palmer. What was your cry?
Oh man.
There's definitely not a chip implanted in my brain.
Yeah. But those like murals, are those like murals really there? Like the Nazi murals and everything? And that's hilarious.
Palmer, what's happening? Where am I? What's going on?
There's glitching like that. You must your veil must be pierced.
Those pictures are there. I've taken pictures of them. There are Freemason markings throughout the facility.
Yeah.
If you know where to look, you can find them. There are floors that are not accessible by elevators. Who knows? Who knows? Who can tell?
So
I mean, I certainly don't have a higher clearance than anybody else at the airport, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Or do I have a higher clearance? Yeah. So, but obviously, and those are fun. Like I remember watching the first couple of seasons. Heard of the show Ancient Aliens on I think History Channel. So I find those
aliens, but it's aliens.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, George Soulakis.
Yeah.
Or whatever his name is. But anyway,
the most
those
amazing
things
hair on the planet.
Yeah, I find enjoyable but there's always potential that they're dangerous, frankly.
Yeah.
That level of intensity, because it can really fanaticize people and militarize them sometimes, as we see in this character almost.
So this makes me self-conscious. So like, let's say Ancient Aliens. Like, I enjoy Ancient Aliens first off because it does scratch my conspiracy theory itch. But then there is also like the intellectual side of me that does like to consider. I would not say it's like I'm believing, right? But I think anybody who loves learning and is going to adapt their values and their understanding of the world, they're going to take in any evidence that they have. So like, I watch shows like that, and they're just like, if anything, it's an exercise in consideration, right? Like, you're considering that perspective. I actually was thinking about a fight not a fight, but like, I got really irritated with another cabin kid when the Matrix movie came out. Cause I was like, you got to see this fucking movie. Like, it's just mind blowing, and then we watched the movie and I was like, so what do you think about all of that? And, oh no, that was a good movie. I'm like, yeah, but like, think about that. And well, I'm not saying like, I mean, there's obviously no chance that would ever even be possible. And looking back, I of course got like stupidly irritated, but part of that was, it's like, of course that's not possible. Like, that's not what it is. But there's a piece of me that's like, well, let's just consider that. And that's what I couldn't articulate that as a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old, or it's like, let's just spend the 2 hours like considering it for a second. And then we can be like, yeah, but that's all, like, it's not actually true. So now we're done thinking about it and postulating about it.
Well, I think it's fair. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what Dave thinks, or maybe you guys already talked about in the last cast. But for me, I grew up in an environment where if something was unexplained, then God.
Yeah.
And so when I watch a show like that, it was like, well, we don't know how the universe did this, so God must have done it. Or we don't know what caused this to happen in somebody's life, so it must be God working behind the scenes. And so when I watch a show like that, as much as I enjoy it and it's interesting and fun, it just kind of sounds like, we don't understand this, so aliens.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily believe, we can't figure this out. We don't have a clear understanding as to why this happened, so aliens.
My biggest complaint with a lot of the early Ancient Aliens was, it's like, there's no way that ancient humans were this smart that could have done this, so it had to have been aliens. And it's like, man, you're really selling, like, they had the same capability of intelligence as we do now. Like,
yeah, I'd have a hard time believing, looking around me on a daily basis, that we're really that much more intelligent than our ancestors. But
right. I'm sorry I cut you off, but that's
no. I'm not. It's not. I don't mean to be dismissive. I think those things are fun and interesting. I just
sure
my past experience leads me to probably dismiss some of those things a little quicker than, because it's a similar sell.
That's totally fair. I think that is 100% fair. So let me play devil's advocate on this. Let's spiral back to Dead Zone. So let me play devil's advocate on the Vera character, because Dave, you can even chime in on this a little bit too. I kind of focused on Vera a little bit in some of my questions, my guiding questions for the Dead Zone. It could be argued though that all of Vera's predictions came true by the end of the book. Would you agree with that?
I'm not super sure, but maybe, yeah. I love this idea of the questions too, if nothing else. Like, I think, especially now that we all have the book in mind and have seen the film,
you
might be
not
fun.
Have seen all the questions yet, Twinkie, because we were only
What if we? I mean, we don't have to do them all. You can cherry pick them, but let's So previously, we were going through the book and trying to talk about our thoughts on them, and I think the questions to some extent got lost in terms of whether or not they were answered. by us or
that's
even
fair.
specifically considered. So maybe now is the time that it could be good. Like you could, I know there's a lot of them, so you can be like, wow, not that one, but
Yeah.
or we could just take them all on. Like, fuck it. I think this is a great opportunity.
Let me.
Yeah, you can lightning round me with a couple of them or something, or lightning round us.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find. That's got all. Here we go. So that way I can still stay on mic and.
Oh yeah.
Over my shoulder.
While you're kind of looking through that, just a second, in bringing this up to Holly, and of course we have lots of conversations about my religious past, as she's my partner and
sure
is curious and probably wonders why I'm so messed up. She indicates that King has a lot of characters like this in his books.
We've talked about
okay
that.
Okay,
even as like, because Dave is really early in his Stephen King anthology consumption, right?
Yeah, so I'm interested. I'm almost interested in reading more Stephen King, book club or no, simply because of that that approach. And
but this early, Dave, how many characters would you say that you've run across that are very similar to Vera? There's Carrie's mom is like that.
Carrie's mom is the most extreme. So
yeah,
I would definitely recommend Carrie. It's a short book. It's his first book. It's a great book. Great movie adaptation by Brian De Palma. Really great. Definitely check that one out if you're intrigued by this. Like it's much more extreme actually in a focal point. And then I would argue a little bit smaller characters.
I would recommend then there's a novella. You could probably get through it in a day. It's that short called The Mist. And then it had a really, 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 really popular adaptation movie wise by Frank Darabont, the same guy that adapted Shawshank Redemption and
right.
He adapted The Mist. Now that one is a horror. It's a horror story all the way through, but there is a real, like, if you took Vera and then you took Carrie's mom and combined them into the same character and then put them on LSD, that would be the character that you get in The Mist.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
well, even like in the book Dodd's mother, while it doesn't really come out and say she's religious, that certainly indicates that her unwillingness to talk about sexuality or sexual behavior with her son, a lot of that comes from, I think, in my experience in basic stuff is discomfort because of religious views on what sexuality is or isn't. So you can even make the argument in this book that Dodd's mother probably has some sort of affectation of religious extremism.
It's also Stephen King was raised by a single mother and kind of shuffled around throughout his life. From living with family, like extended family, but always like with a single mother. Him and his brother and his mother. It was like the three of them. And so I feel like the Dodd's case is it's very Oedipus, right?
Definitely.
And I think that there's a lot. I think a better way to say it. I was going down a dark place. I think a better way to say it is there's a lot of King working out relationships with mothers in his work. I feel like, and I think this religious piece is a portion of that. I don't think, based on what I know for what he's talked about of his mother, I don't think she was overly religious. I think there were some family members that they lived with throughout his life that had
he has no
impacts on his life.
He has no love, at least from what I've. One of the things I did before I read it is I like to read a book in what I believe to be the author's actual voice as much as I can. I like to hear their voice. So I watched just a couple of YouTube videos of him. One was a just crazy fun time with him and George R.R. Martin on a stage talking to each other.
Yeah, that's on our YouTube page.
Yeah,
I watched that.
Yeah, and another one was just him presenting to a class. And so then I could read the book kind of in his voice. And then, of course, filling in some of the stuff with Holly and doing a little research. He definitely, I don't know if he's ever really come out and said he's an atheist. I think he's definitely at least a humanist. But he's basically has zero patience for extremism as far as religion is concerned. Yeah. And paints
I think he has zero tolerance for extremism in any form.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to like see his writing on that.
Yeah. If you want to he actually reads some of his audiobooks. If you ever are interested in that, let me know and I can let you know which ones he reads. Because those are always fun. I am a very auditory person. It is hard for me to listen to him just because of that. He does that nasal, like, Maine accent, and
you can do it a little bit. Do it for us.
Yeah. This machine just called me an asshole. Like it all comes out of the nose. It's like,
I always think about L's too. I can't do it, but there's something about lunch. I can't quite do it. I live in Minnesota, and there are some people who do
lunch.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know, like it's just it's weird sounds pass through his nose. That's what happens. And it makes it. He reads some portions of Hearts in Atlantis, and he reads Needful Things, though, is really fun, and he reads that. So that's a great one. I would recommend. That's awesome.
And On Writing is kind of the best.
Yeah,
like it's Stephen King telling his own story and talking about his own process. Yeah. But that you don't even. That's the very first Stephen King I ever read, and I read it first. I read it on the page, and then when I got back, when I became interested in exploring his body of work, I decided to listen to that before some of the novels, and it's so fun. Like that, I can't recommend that book more to like anyone interested in him or his books.
Yeah, that sounds great, and I really do. I mean, it helps me to process information for whatever reason when I hear the gate at how they're speaking. Probably because I feel like the way I write, when I do write things down nowadays, is the way I talk. And so that's why it helps me to feel that a little bit.
Yeah, I saw this note that you had about reading versus listening versus watching, and then listening in King's voice and writing how we talk. Tell us more about that.
Well, I just think that you guys have been listening on audiobook, correct? For the most part. Yeah. And so Franco, I'm sure, reads in different voices. I think you had Stilson kind of affecting and like this Southern drawl. Or does he not do that? Yeah. And so, he's giving this character a voice that I wouldn't necessarily, when I'm reading it, I didn't picture him that way. The way Franco presents it, apparently in his audio recording. And so that's why I find really interesting that when you read an audiobook, you're reading you're hearing an interpretation of an actor or an actress presenting material the way they believe it should be spoken, and I'm reading it in a way that I think King would have written it, just because I've listened to him a couple times. It doesn't mean either is right or wrong. Just you do get a slight difference in how the characters are presented. I think Stilson is his origination in the South. I guess I don't really know that. So there may be things that I missed.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, his history kind of, you get that little bit that Johnny does after the fire at Christie's. Is that the name of that restaurant, Christie's? Is that right, or Christine's, or something like that?
Oh no, I'm blanking, but I know it's a name.
But after that is where you get that's where he does his like deep research on Stilson. He like tries to go back as far as possible.
Oh, right. Okay.
Our backstory.
And kind of like the earliest that he gets is that story about where he was a rainmaker. And that was out in, that's like, is that in Nebraska? Or he's dealing with like cattle ranchers and everything. So, that he would pick up, I would assume he would have some accent from that.
Have either of you heard of a rainmaker before, by the way?
No, absolutely.
I heard of the lawyer term, but
the lawyer term I had heard of. That's true. But I chalk that up to just like that's obviously a dating. It dated the book. Yeah. Or that could be a real thing.
It sounded literal, like somebody supposedly came in and would manifest rain somehow.
With his tracts, I don't know.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to derail that. Where were we going with that? Oh, the listening and hearing Greg Stilson as a Southerner and listening versus
right, and that's just one of the things that I'm sure I'm positive. Franco does a fantastic job. Just that the difference in listening versus reading, and then of course a movie, just a completely different experience entirely.
Oh yeah, I honestly would only recommend the movie over the book if somebody's just not a book person, because the movie does a great job, like I said, of grasping the tone of the book. Honestly, I think that the scene with Martin Sheen, when he finally flashes on Greg Stillson in the movie, and you see Martin Sheen in that study, and he like forces that guy to like scan his hand to open up the codes so that he can like start the nuclear war. That I feel like was 100% way more effective than this flash was in the book on why he needed to kill Stillson in the book. I don't think he ever comes. Does it ever come up until the epilogue? Do they ever come right out and say that he saw nuclear fallout? Like that still, like in his letter to his dad, I think is the first time that you finally get that that's what he saw.
Right. No, they don't definitely mention it during the initial flashback.
Yeah. But man, in the movie, first off, Martin fucking Sheen.
That blew my mind. I had no idea that was coming. And of course, within the Dead Zone book discussion, one of my Dave's digs was Grace and Frankie, in which Martin Sheen is a major character, and we talked about it.
Yeah.
And kudos to you for not like giving away. It's like, hey, he's Stillson in the movie, dude.
Yeah.
Like that was a big surprise to me, and he was perfect. He was great,
man. In that, but that when Johnny flashes on him, and he convinces that guy to scan his hand, that speech that he gives, that's fucking intense. He's terrifying. Like, because you have to think, like, he has to sell this character to make the audience want him to be assassinated, right? Like, because that's what Johnny has to do. Like, it's really a hard sell. It's like, even in the book, it's a hard sell. You especially in the book, you spend so much of the book really feeling sorry for Johnny. Like he just keeps getting shit on and shit on and shit on and shit on and shit on. And so then you're like, okay, so this guy's got to finally win. Oh, wait, no, he has to ruin his life and try to kill this guy. That sucks. Like, that just sucks. And like, man.
Let's hit some of those questions. Oh, sorry. First, you follow through with your thoughts.
Well, just one quick response. I don't know if that scene has the effect that it has on me under the previous administration. If you're listening to this and you're a U.S. citizen.
Previous?
Yeah. If I watched this 3 or 4 years ago, I don't know if that scene is as terrifying to me.
Oh, that's true.
Then.
That's true.
As it is now, because in my mind,
like you're thinking like circa like 2013, 2014-ish.
Oh yeah. No, we're not. There's no worries at all.
I'm just like, man, Martin Sheen needs to take a fucking chill pill, right?
Yeah, thank God we have people who are adults and are interested in negotiating and can understand that the world requires conversation.
I think that's the
dialogue.
I think that's another piece of this, is that this, Dave and I have touched on this a couple times in our discussions about the book. It is very interesting that this book, which really, for all intents and purposes, in a catalog of Stephen King books, this one I would put in the bottom third, and not for any other reason, just because it's dwarfed by such other amazing pieces of work. By no means am I belittling this book. It's really, I mean, it's a great book. It's really well written. It is really interesting that they happen to re-release this on audiobook, quote unquote, for the first time, which I have an audiobook version of this book to prove that it's not the first time they put it out on audiobook.
They pulled it Disney style though.
They did. And have James Franco, and then to have James Franco read it, which the only reason I can justify that is that he did 11/22/63 on Hulu, which is another Stephen King book.
Okay.
They did a television adaptation of that, and he played the main character. And so that's why he did that. But it's just funny that they just so happened to choose this obscure, like quote unquote obscure Stephen King work to re-put out on audiobook to try to like give some kind of revival to. Because I mean, again, just like your tweet. I mean, it's.
I was gonna ask if I could read that before we go.
Yeah,
Here's my
please do.
My tweet as of yesterday to the author Stephen King, who has approximately 175 million followers, who will never see this.
He'll get to your tweet. He'll get to it.
Yeah.
We've tagged him 100.
Yeah.
He's never acknowledged us. No, really.
Or should he? Yeah, or should he? Exactly. This is ridiculous. At what point did you realize that you had written Donald Trump into the dead zone?
Yep. I it's so relevant.
I don't understand how.
Talks. Twinkie, I don't know if you heard on a past episode, like there was a time where I watched both the video that you mentioned with George R.R. Martin and a bunch of talks he gave in academic settings, one of which was near or after the election. He literally said, like, something about, I predicted Donald Trump, like, he's definitely acknowledges that.
Do you think that the original character was somewhat a Ronald Reagan-esque?
Actually, I have a note from a biographer here where they're talking about. So I'm watching this DVD from 2006. So we're into the second Bush administration, and at the time,
can you explain like the 2006 edition, like what makes that edition special versus the the original version of the film? Is there anything?
Oh, I think it's just a DVD thing where that was. I don't know
like
if there was
reissue, like a DVD reissue.
To that. Yeah. There, around that time, there's a definite sort of design cohesiveness with a bunch of Stephen King related releases that I'm sure were owned by the same parent company. So like the DVD I got at the stand had this kind of treatment. I think they were just re-releasing their Stephen King catalog as best they had them as adaptations. Whoever owned this, and I think Paramount is the logo at the beginning of the movie, but I don't know how far that extends. But there's some extra stuff. One of which is like there's a bunch of featurettes. I'm not going to go on and on about this, but I want to say a short thing about featurettes that started around this time for DVDs and just got worse. It used to be you'd make a documentary where there was an art to blending in the story of the making of a movie. Maybe it'd be feature length. And actually, coincidentally enough, Laurent Bouzereau, I don't know if I'm saying that name right, he did so many wonderful supplementary things for DVDs, from Scarface to Taxi Driver to this, tons. I don't know of anyone else who's done more.
Not to cut you off, but would this also be in the era? You were the person that explained to me when I was, young and naive, when DVDs were first coming out. But when DVDs first started coming out to market, it was a very intimate creation process. Like there was one person that was tasked with taking this film that they were going to sell on VHS and putting them on this new format, which was DVD. So it really was a crapshoot on who got assigned the movie conversion onto DVD, on how robust the DVD was, like the menus and the special features and those things. So if it was assigned to a person that really cared about the movie or was really good at that job, like this person you're talking about.
That's amazing that you remember that, A. But two, I'm not sure where that information comes from. I do remember saying that, espousing that. Yeah. I don't know if I was correct.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it's more to do with the transfer actually than the supplementary content.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But the soapbox I was about to get on is it's yes, it is probably the hill I'm going to die on, but it's not a winning battle. Where I really appreciate the craft that goes into like weaving together a documentary, especially one about the creative process or the creation of something. That's something I have a special interest in, as we've talked about on the show. And this guy Laurent Bouzereau, I remember being like, I studied his work with Taxi Driver, the DVD that came out in 1998. They were still making VHSs. So like there's a half-hour version of this documentary. There's a 80 to 90-minute version on the DVD, and it's like it's
Wow.
great. Like, you know, I'm not gonna say it's like a work of art, but it's really well done in terms of like how you blend in the discussion about different aspects of the film. But the DVD medium prompted these, what would be like this series of featurettes that were not so artful about combining and interweaving things. It'd be like, this is the section about such and such, and it's 10 minutes. And this is the section about another topic, and it's another 10 minutes. And it's like,
Right.
just fucking weave them together. I mean, I understand. And now we're in the edge of the
Like
internet.
put it in a narrative. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Like make a movie out of it. Like make an actual documentary out of it.
Yeah.
If each vignette is bookended by a title card, you know, which auditorial, what would a title card look like auditorially? Probably something like this.
Is that a signal?
No, but I'm just saying, like, if you're going to take the time to make the title card and put it in between each one of those vignettes, like just have a little bit of narrative, like put a little effort into the narrative, and you could just weave those things together without the title card.
And I was a student of documentaries at the time, and I was making documentaries of the footage and interviews I had about my movie, the adaptation, The Crow.
And your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I watched and I learned from some of that, like how you can make special case to like, anyway. So I really like those kinds of things. I really like this guy's work. He happens to do the DVD supplementary content for this 2006 edition that I watched. And there was enough DVD featurettes to make up a 90-minute documentary. It was just broken up. So, fuck, you guys asked me a specific question. I went off on that. Do you guys remember? Damn it. Sorry.
Was the Stilson character maybe something along the lines of Ronald Reagan?
Thank you. So, I learned from this. There was the featurette in 2006 about politics. I was all excited about this because I figured that just as we were saying that this was auspicious, that this was re-released in light of the Trump presidency, I thought this 2006 or DVD edition was a reaction to the Bush being reelected. So I thought this featurette, 10 minutes or whatever on politics was going to be amazing. Not so much, but like it wasn't very charged with the Bush administration. But it did say, I think it was a biographer that spoke to this, and he felt that the Stilson character was a kind of a combination between the words still and Nixon, as though we were still in a Nixon-esque, at least in the story, environment of, I don't know what's, secrecy and corruption and such.
I just found it to be so interesting in the movie where there's a scene where Sarah's husband somewhat accidentally knocks on Johnny's door to talk about the Stilson campaign and very clearly mentions it being a third party.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously Trump is
in the book too. He does. It's called the America Now Party.
Right.
Yeah.
Which,
Make
God.
America great again.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
There's symbol
from what
Stilson symbol is a hard hat, and there's a red hat. Like Jesus.
But also Twinkie, to like what me and I and so many other people ask to that ridiculous statement and hat is like, at what point are you referring to?
Right.
No, yeah.
And I feel like it's that kind of mid 1950s kind of idyllic but bullshit.
Absolutely, which is my fascination of that.
Racism was socially acceptable. That's what the time they want to get back to. When
it was great if you were a white
you
dude.
could smoke in restaurants. You could like shit on minorities and poor people. Women made sandwiches.
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah, it was great if you're a white dude, and if you're everybody else, go fuck yourself. Yeah.
I mean what I say. Like we're in. This is the reason. I believe the reason it's so bad that it is right now is because we are in the death throes of the baby boomer generation. Like
absolutely.
In anything, it's the fight or flight. Like it's fight or flight on a social scale where they are fighting at this point. Like they know that they're backed into a corner, and they're gonna have to hand that power over to the next, to Generation X.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I have a guest of the guest. Here.
Hello!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Ah!
Oh my gosh! It's a baby Twinkie.
Do you want to say hi to my friends? Yeah, you should say hi to my friends. Yeah, you can
Hi.
wave to them.
Oh my
This
heavens.
is Palmer, and this
Hi,
is
honey.
Dave. Do you want to say what movie that you went to see in the theaters recently?
I saw Trolls.
How was it?
You did see Trolls. Did you have fun seeing Trolls?
Yeah.
Really?
That's really cool. Were there any scary parts of Trolls?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me one of them?
Yeah, what was scary?
Mm-mm.
You don't remember? Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh,
I love you a lot. I'll see you in the morning, okay?
Oh man, I'm gonna be Twinkie's kid.
Good night.
Aw.
Whoa, that was
Man.
that's something to see over the
Yeah.
internet.
Man, oh man.
Man.
She is an incredible girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cried at Trolls. So what?
Hey,
You
I
know
haven't
the
seen
part-
it. I'm sure I would.
I cry at fucking commercials, man. Like I
That-
cried
that-
on this damn podcast.
I'm crying right now.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what?
Yeah,
That-
Dave's
They
crying right
sing-
now.
They sing this cover of True Colors by
Oh man,
So
yeah.
blanking,
That's by
um,
Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi
Yeah, Cyndi
Lauper. Fuck, I'm like yeah. It's so touching. It's really good.
That is
Yes.
really
Awesome.
good. Oh my god.
That's my daughter. and
That's
she is-
incredible, dude.
Yeah.
she's amazing.
Cabin
Little
kids
Twinkie.
make the better kids, I'm pretty sure, as I'm finding
man.
out.
Yeah.
Wait till you see any pictures or whatever evidence
Oh.
of Holmes' kid. He's like a grown ass man. But
Yeah.
he-
Yeah.
He is.
I don't know, 2 or 3.
A grown ass World War II veteran man.
That
Like,
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's like
like-
that guy in the
yeah.
Dead Zone who's like, we asked like, would you kill Hitler?
Yeah.
Yeah. and he's like, see
Yes.
this knife? I'd stick it in and I'd twist her. Like that.
It's just
like
all
that.
in his eyes. But seriously,
Yeah.
it's there. I met the kid. I'm like, why are you being this aggressive?
Yep. Yeah. Because Pumps is his fucking dad. That's
I guess,
why.
yeah.
Like-
I saw in the picture today that I could see his mom. I'm like, oh, thank God. But holy
Yeah.
shit.
I think when we talk about the cabin, and I'm not gonna sorry for interrupting our conversation with that, but when I think about that, there's a certain amount of compassion and love that I feel I have inside of me to give, and it's really easy to give it to kids. I mean, they innocent, sweet. I mean, not a harmless or not a harmful bone in their body, and
No ulterior motives.
Also,
Just-
you haven't met my niece because her eyes go black and she's
Yeah.
a curious kid. And then, like, I hope it's cute aggression, but like, literally her grandma will be like, oh, you got that look in your face. Don't pinch him like that. He's your uncle. Don't hurt him.
she'll come at you.
Wow.
Maybe there's an age cutoff to this. But I'm a big fan of her. But yeah, like not
Yeah.
all kids, maybe Frank died as a youth.
Yeah. Well, and there's certainly there's my goal of being a parent, which is simply not to fuck the thing up. Frankly,
Yeah.
the whole parenting thing. I mean, I refer to her as an it. She's wonderful, but fuck the whole parenting thing up. Honestly, I feel like a lot of times if I just get out of the way, she'll do fantastic. But
Yep.
yeah. So it's by the way, it's apparently her bedtime. What time is it?
It is 10:30 Eastern time.
Oh yeah, perfect.
So kind of wrap up before 11.
I love this idea of hitting these questions that we posed and not answer.
Yeah. So all right. So let's just do. All right. You know what? Fuck it. I am going to keep a timer.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
I double dog dare
I got a
you.
lot of notes. No, I do, but they don't need to come up. I'll try to work them in.
There
So
you go.
here's.
Interesting ones.
So I'll give we each get a minute. I'm not even going to answer. How about you two just talk? All right.
Oh,
I
well,
think
I
we
want
can
to
all
hear.
answer. Like there may or may not
Okay.
be easy answers to some of these questions, and we could defer, etc.
All right.
Right.
So,
Yeah. This is because I just have a one-time read through this. I'm sure I didn't catch a lot
All
of
right.
things, and I may just not have.
All right. So, all right. I'm going to. So this was from the first assignment. So there's three. How about this? I'll read all three questions, and then as the three of us, we'll pick two of those to talk about, and then we'll go round robin and like give our take on those questions. How's that sound?
Great.
All right. So this first one. So here's the three questions. What characters and situations stick out and why? That's a really boring question. What situations and events does King touch on that drive the bulk of his intention with the story so far? From the 1970s. I'm sorry. What situations and events from the 1970s does he touch on that helps drive his story? And then the reaction question was, why do you feel, what do you feel the importance, if any, is of scenes like the scene with the dog, or the scene with the bandstand? Those were, in that first reading assignment, those were the two like most graphic scenes. You had the bandstand, the first murder of the Castle Rock Strangler, and then also the murder of the dog happened in that first reading assignment. So I say let's scrap the first question. What situations and characters? We've already talked about Vera. We'll talk about the other situations and characters.
Yeah, I'm good with that. The second two.
Okay, so all right, Twinkie. So let's, or do you want to hear how do you want to do? Like, we'll go you first, and then we'll go Dave first for the next one.
I feel like you and I might have had chances to answer these in the past.
Yeah.
So let's prioritize Twinkie, I would say, at least above myself.
Yeah. So Twinkie. So what situations and events from the 70s do you feel like he touched on the most in the book that helped drive the intention of the story?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly fascinated by Nixon.
Yep.
Because Johnny wakes up from his coma and wants to know what's going on, and then has a pretty severe reaction to the whole Nixon thing. I don't recall the specifics to that, but certainly the politics of the day are very intriguing, and you can even see that now in Stephen King. If you follow him on Twitter, he's definitely engaged in that. So it certainly drove him to talk about this Stilson character, which you referenced, of course. The combination of his name may still be indicating that. I really didn't notice too much international things that may have affected it. That seemed to be the big thing to me, was a very politically driven story.
Yeah.
Which is what he was obviously running to write about.
And I think that those were the biggest pieces from the 70s that he did touch on, was the politics of the 70s. He didn't, I mean, of course, the story is taking place in the 70s. So the lifestyle of the 70s is being expressed through the characters. So the politics definitely, I think, were the biggest thing. I think in addition to Nixon, the Vietnam War, the sentiment towards the Vietnam War was definitely, I love the parallel that he draws where Sarah eats a bad hot dog, and then he kind of gives the speech while he's riding in the cab. He has that internal monologue about how a generation of young men were fed bad hot dogs, and that was the Vietnam War. And then they were given, the next politician came along, and his solution to the problem was more hot dogs. And so you have this little monologue, and then cut forward hundreds of pages in the book to where Stilson hands out hot dogs, literally feeding another bad hot dog.
I didn't make that connection.
To his constituents, and so that bad hot dog symbolism that represents the Vietnam War. And then you have Go, who the Vietnamese gardener who escaped Vietnam. I thought it was really, considering the time period that this novel was written and released, still in the late 70s, to have a Vietnamese character in the book, you could tell that even though the Vietnam War was technically quote unquote over at that point in time, it was still really prevalent in like the American consciousness that he thought to like, let's put a Vietnamese character in this book. Like, you don't see Vietnamese characters just tucked into novels or movies, unless they're just trying to hit a token diversity. You know what I mean? Like, but I feel like there was a definite intention so that they could make the Laughing Tiger connection. So yeah, I also this first section of the book, because you talked about earlier, this is the only way I can spiral back to this. You talked about earlier how they left out the Wheel of Fortune, and I thought it was interesting. Literally, the first part of the book is titled "The Wheel of Fortune."
Oh, that metaphor is monumental.
And the first line of the book, the two things Sarah remembered about the night later were his run of luck at the Wheel of Fortune and the mask. Neither of those things made it in the movie. It's the first line of the fucking book. Like, I just thought that I just wanted to spiral back. I'm
glad you mentioned that too, because I think that's also harkens back to one of the things that Twiki brought up, which is like reading versus listening. When you listen to it, you just kind of hear the events, it washes over you. But when you read it, because I did a little bit of both, only in like I listened to it and then I looked back at my text. And those kind of really overt foreshadowings about the Wheel of Fortune, or like a chapter starting with the sentence you just read, got by me as a listener. I don't think it would have as a reader.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I had to, only because I had listened to the book like 3 times relatively close all together, right? Is when it was that second or third time through where I was like, Jesus, this Wheel of Fortune section is really long. And that's when I took my actual hard copy of the book and just went from, okay, this is when that section starts and this is where it ends. It's like 20 or 30 pages. Like, that's a size. And again, the whole first part of the book is called The Wheel of Fortune. You know, like, it's just a huge piece of symbolism that I found very interesting that Cronenberg decided to omit from the movie. Even so, like, to the point that they went to, like, he took her to that carnival or to that amusement park. And I'm like, oh, yeah, man, this is going to lead right to the Wheel of Fortune scene. Like, I'm really interested to see how they're going to do that scene.
Roller coaster.
And it cut right from the roller coaster to him pulling up to her apartment. And it wasn't even that she was sick, right? Like, it was just like the storm was coming and he wanted, some things are worth waiting for. They made him even more pure than he already was in the book. Like, there was a couple times where I'm just like, Johnny is just like this every American, like the ideal American male. And you're just like,
well, it's also like when you have Walken as that, it was literally comical. Like when you had him at the beginning and because I know I bring up Last Temptation of Christ a lot on this podcast, but I think that movie is fucking amazing. Twinkie, have you seen that?
I have. It's on my list of like 17 movies that you guys talk about that I've yet to see.
I would put it up there. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to say it's like 100% successful movie, but it's very interesting, and especially if you look into it. But Walken was the first choice to play Jesus in that film, and I think Willem Dafoe is perfect. Actually, I can't imagine it being any other way. And he has this otherworldly quality to him that speaks to the dichotomy of that film, which is like man and God in the same sort of human form. But Walken would easily assume, and it's so understanding why they would choose him as this otherworldly figure. And I remember inside the actor studio that I saw where Walken talks about his background, where he talks about like, he's like, I'm an alien from the planet show business. I think he sees himself as other, and he's very singular and odd. And so to see him as this Johnny Smith school teacher at the beginning of the Cronenberg film with a kind of his hair like down over his
the Dumb and Dumber look going on there.
Yeah, it's a little silly. It's like, you're gonna love it. It's about a school teacher gets his head cut off.
And, and he looks like he's 40, and he's supposed like
Yeah, but it's so I think that's an interesting thing that they omitted that altogether. And I actually think the more that you talk about it, it's very interesting, this whole laughing tiger thing in the Vietnam. I don't know that that's been explored enough in the analysis of the book by either us or anyone else. But I don't want to get too derailed.
I think it just knowing that Stilson represents Nixon, right? It's this like recurring fear of Nixon. Is that what you said earlier?
That's what someone like the biographer said, like this idea of still Nixon. He also said this thing that I thought was interesting to share, which is that King, that he thought that Johnny is a proxy of Stephen King, the writer, at this point being thrust into the limelight. The Dead Zone.
Oh, that, you know what? And that actually ties to some, well, that's getting, because we're gonna spiral back to that in some of these questions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go on to that. But
we'll hold on to that. But the Dead Zone, I also learned, was Stephen King's first novel to get in the like hardcover bestseller list. So of all these movies, that's what they're saying in these supplementary materials and stuff in the biographer. And then the last thing for now is that the biographer said that Stephen King at this point in his career after The Stand was wanting to write something more realistic, and actually was alternating between this text and Firestarter. So like he was writing Firestarter, which I haven't started to listen to just yet, but has sort of telekinesis as a basis yet again.
Pyrokinesis,
right?
That's why it's Firestarter, because she's.
But it's like mental, sort of mental, like through telepathy or whatever it is, like Carrie or Dead Zone or Firestarter.
This is a social. I have actually looked into this because Carrie, this book, Firestarter, there's a number of books, and even some of his later books, that really have this assumed existence approach towards sixth sense or sixth senses. But I think that's how he treats all of the supernatural in his books. It's just it's not like, oh wow, look at this. It's like the Bill Murray approach. It's just like, yeah, this is just how it is. Like, duh. Would you like, is that accurate? I don't know.
It's definitely a hallmark or like a stalwart of his early books, like this thing, like meditations on a theme or something, or variations on a theme. I want to know what Twinkie thinks about some of these more extreme scenes, because I can imagine as a first-time King reader how these hit you. Because I, as someone who's early in the chronology but listening a lot, I've mentioned this on the podcast, but like I forget sometimes that he's primarily associated as a horror fiction writer. Like I get shocked sometimes, like what the fuck, like with the killing of a dog or something, because
in Twinkie
a lot of times he's not like that. He just tells stories, and then sometimes they get really ugly.
This is a great one. I'm glad that you spiraled back to this, because like Twinkie sent that text when we were planning this recording, where he's like, I was expecting the book to be a lot more like scary and rapey, and it ended up being way more scary psychologically.
Yeah, way more mindfucky.
Yeah. Yes. then like
hashtag mindfucky. Yes.
Yeah. Then like which is funny, because the dog scene and the bandstand scene, like those are classic King. Both like violence towards dogs is just like having these overly zealot, overbearing female characters. Violence towards dogs is a recurring theme of his that just happens.
No,
I know it. Like,
right?
It's gut wrenching every time it happens. It's gut wrenching, and I the only thing I like to think it's because he always has dogs, and he writes about his dogs whenever he's doing like being autobiographical. I think it's just like his dogs just pissed him off that day, and he's just like, fuck it, I'm gonna beat you to death. Like, I'm gonna kick you to death in my book, like because I can't kick you to death in real life. So
I also think of it as like he imagines like what's the worst thing. Like
that's
like,
probably more. That's probably closer to what it is. Is like
Or
that would be
both, you know, it's
devastating.
possible.
Like, yeah.
Well, because I think you're asking as a reader, what kind of person is this?
Yep.
Obviously, unfortunately, we're all too familiar with serial killers, or I mean, that's not. But you don't really hear in the news. Doesn't necessarily report, "Hey, live from X, Y, and Z, this person just kicked a dog to death." That doesn't make the news, and so that to me is almost more jarring. And it's like, what kind of person takes out their frustration, anger, whatever those emotions are, boiling on something that very obviously cannot respond? You know,
Right.
like
that's
if I was
literally
doing,
textbook of like what serial of like
yeah,
telltale signs of you're going to be a serial killer
Yep.
if you hurt animals.
Yep.
yeah. So that's the terrifying part. That's the thing where I don't read that scene. I'm not necessarily like laying at night thinking about the actual movements of the man going up and kicking the dog. I'm thinking like, what kind of person is that? Like, well, we think we know what kind of person that is, and then as the story progresses, it fills in your fear with something even far more terrifying.
Double D had a great observation about that the dog scene where he could have walked away, and I think on all of these vignettes with Stilson, the last one being with the banker where he's like, we need to prime the pump and I need this money, because still all the scenes with Stilson after that point are him as a politician. You don't see these like back room Stilson scenes anymore. But in all of those scenes, the dog one especially, there's a point where he won, but that's not enough. You know, like the dog did exactly what you asked it to do. Like, and you're getting pissed because it defended itself. And so now it's like going to sit there and suffer. Like it has to pay the price for your ignorance, basically. And, man, I yeah. So what about the bandstand? Like, what about the bandstand scene or anything to do with the Castle Rock Strangler? Like, did you was that off-putting? Did you think that like, in contrast to, because it does contrast the rest of the book like that?
Just, you know, the most, again, the more graphic thing to me was the interaction between the mother and the son. Sure. I think there's just something about that it feels so inappropriate, and you know, it's not really that graphic. I mean, the way he writes it even kind of talks about that experience like the parent would have not talked about that experience to her son. He kind of alludes to the fact that, you know, she's accusing him of masturbating and he needs to take care, you know, he can't do that. And in reality, he just had, you know, he's a middle school or young kid. He's had an erection. Yeah. So, I mean,
I've had a boner for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
What to be at the beginning?
I was going to say, if it's more than 4 hours, you're supposed to contact your physician. So you make it to the end of the podcast.
We're getting there. That's a normal recording session.
So it's scenes like that more than even like the actual killing and murdering. I guess maybe just because I'm somewhat hardened to it. It's on the news all the time.
Yep.
Another shooting, another.
We get desensitized to it with our PG-13 existence of like media, and how they can be super violent but super unrealistic of that violence. Like, the consequences of that violence are not realistic. Whoa. Oh, that's a cat.
Oh, wow.
Why'd you come downstairs? Did you hear me talking about masturbation?
What is the name of this cat?
Sick cat.
Yeah.
Her name is Stella Luna Squeaker.
Dirty fucker.
And I will kick you to death.
I'm going to put a clothespin on that for 2 hours so you know what it's like.
Yeah.
You dirty fucker.
You filthy animal. Just kidding. You're slightly annoying, but other than that, you're really good.
All right, let's move on.
Yep. Questions.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to the second one. So here, I'm just going to say the 3 questions, and we can talk about them as a whole. Let's do that now. We'll just change. We'll change the rules every time. Look at the cat, like being a parrot, like fucking cat, man. Cats are assholes. That's so great. All right.
Yeah.
So here's the 3 questions. So the explicit for the second reading was, how are the reactions to Johnny's powers effective and relevant compared to how they would be if it were to occur today? Like, basically, I think that the way that he writes about how people react to his powers are timeless. Like that's just how humans would react, regardless of the time period that happened. So I want to get back to that conversation. That's the question that would lead to that conversation, Dave, about this. He represents King jump to stardom. That's so interesting. What parallels exist in all the Stilson scenes? So up to this point in the book, you would have the dog, you'd have Sonny, the first time we meet Sonny, you have the kid, like the mayor's or the city councilman's nephew who wore the like "let's fuck" t-shirt or whatever, or "hey baby, let's fuck." Is that what it says? Like, "Hey baby,
like
let's fuck."
That should be one of the long walk short drink t-shirts or strap shirts.
Hey baby, let's fuck. And then the businessman, we end with that on that reading assignment where that's the prime the pump. And was so awesome was right before Dave and I recorded that conversation for this reading assignment, Trump had come out claiming to have the phrase prime.
I remember you guys talking about that. He did. That was incredible.
And he did come out, and like here we had just read proof from like 30 years ago that used that phrase prime the pump, like proving that you did not invent that phrase. Like that.
Yeah. Well, facts have never stopped
alternative
before,
facts. We have alternative facts. So
I have this note in my it goes back to what we were talking about before, the scene where Dodd's mom shoots Johnny on the stairwell and stuff. Yeah. And I had 2 notes about that when I was watching it. One was that it was reminiscent of like the Norman Bates situation in the stairwell, especially in Psycho. That was very, I feel like that was kind of intentional, actually, the Norman Bates mother thing, and then also that stairwell staging of everything. But it says in my notes, non sequitur, Trump on the escalator going down. So when we were first introduced to this asshole as a candidate, he was trying to make this grand entrance. He's on an escalator going down.
Right.
So to contrast that with like sophisticated film grammar in The Exorcist, William Friedkin will tell you at every point in the commentary, etc., every time he gets a chance to show Father Karras, he's going up. He's going upstairs. He's ascending. Because ultimately, he's a character that does good and ascends into heaven, you know? The first time we see this dipshit, he's like announcing his candidacy, whatever, on the world stage. He's literally going down, like falling out of frame. So like on a stairwell. So Stilson stairwell, like Trump coming, like he's just it's only a matter of time. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna get found out like Dodd or whomever. And or fucking Stilson, who gets exposed essentially. I feel like we're a hair's breadth away from that happening with this modern day sort of evocation of this fictional villain.
Well, I hope you're right. I just feel like every time something comes up, it just we get almost numb to it. Well, it's another time that Trump's been exposed to doing this, and
he's great at spin. That's the problem. Is like I have felt. Did you guys read about the Republican firm that leaked 198 million, the data for 198 million voters?
No. What?
Of course you didn't hear about it because nobody's reporting on it. So the GOP hired this firm to track voter data. They put all of it's like terabytes of data. It represents 61% of the American population has been compromised.
How so?
They put their data on an unsecure. Anybody with an internet connection could have gotten to this data. And it's been leaked, and so it's all vote. So it's like names, telephone numbers, addresses, political affiliations.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's a huge deal. It's literally the largest data breach in the history of humanity. And it was buried on the front page of CNN yesterday. It's not on there, I don't think, anymore today. And I mean, I could not know the whole, like, maybe it's not as big of a deal. I just find it funny that, you know, Clinton has an unsecured server that twice the FBI says it was stupid, but it wasn't illegal. And we heard about that even the day of the election. We were still hearing about that shit. And now this is 61% of our population has been compromised in this breach, and nobody's reporting on it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Wag the dog, man.
Wag the dog.
Yeah.
It's just all about spin. So here's this. This is a triple block. This is the 12.9.
Oh Lord!
You're doing that right now?
Yeah.
Shit. You're a bigger man than I.
It's not 12.9. It's 12% alcohol.
Well then, wuss.
It's fine. It's fine.
My baby bladder's full, but I want you to ask Twinkie one of those questions, and he'll answer while I'm going to pee.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go a little slightly different direction of explicit, implicit, because I sent that in my email.
Oh, sure.
The first kind of thing that stuck out to me in the explicit, implicit thing was the scene where Johnny tells Sarah after he's awakened from his coma about her ring.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes home after explicitly saying she doesn't care, and of course looks for it, which all of us would do, right? I mean, if Palmer, you were like, hey, you know that $20 you lost the other day, it's on the couch.
First off, I'm close enough to my money that I would never lose $20.
Yeah.
When people are like, oh, I found $10 in the dryer. Where the fuck did you lose that $10? Like, who loses $10 and doesn't know it? Like,
yeah, I would know it. But you know, whatever it is, human nature would be to dismiss, but then you'd be like, well, what if, you know, it's not all completely batshit crazy. So she goes and looks, and my impression of that whole experience is explicitly, I think maybe some of us think we'd almost want a person in our lives that like we want to be known. We want a person to know us for who we really are. You know, we work hard at, that's what relationships are, is to try to be really clear about our expectations, our needs, our wants.
Communication.
Right? And so to like be known. And she almost when she sees the ring and finds it, she almost has that moment of like, oh my God, like this could really happen. He knows this. He knows me. And then of course it flips to, oh my God, he knows me. And she flushes it down the toilet. And I think there's like this divide of wanting to be known, but then there's this terrifying thought, like if my partner could know who I really am at times, she would want to be my partner. Some of the terrifying things I think, or the actions that I take, or whatever it is, if I had a partner who really knew who I was completely, even though that's something I strive for, there's still a part of me that wants to present the things I want to present, not necessarily everything.
Right. No, there's still a piece of me that's just me. That's just mine. Right.
And so to have someone in your life who really knew you 100% is utterly terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is so implicit in that little, I think, story is the desire of wanting to be known versus the terror of actually experiencing something like that and be like, I don't want any piece of this.
Yep. And
Zero
I
interest.
think that is exactly what Sarah is going through, you know.
Yeah, because she thinks she wants Johnny back.
I don't even think that. I think she feels like she got shorted, and she wants the universe to pay up. She wants the universe to even out what she deserves. And this is where I don't know if they're in the episodes that are released yet, but I really do not like Sarah at all. This is how she's such a good character. It's because I was telling Dave, like, it's the responsibility of the person who has the most to lose to make the responsible decision. If there's multiple people involved, whoever has the most to lose has to be the one that's responsible, right? And she is not at all. Johnny has nothing to lose in the situation of sleeping with her. He only has to reaffirm all of that sense of I was shorted by the universe by doing all of those things.
Right.
She's married. She has a kid. So I really feel like Sarah takes advantage of Johnny. I know what King's intentions are. That it's supposed to be this tragic love that never got a chance to happen. And the last part in the book where she's at his grave and she's talking to him and she kind of she imagines seeing him there and responding to her. And I think she even believes that that's what it is. But at the end, really, it's just, in my opinion, and at the risk of sounding like a men's right activist, which I'm not at all, like, fuck that shit. It is, though, just a shitty fucking move. I don't know. I feel like she really takes advantage of Johnny throughout the book.
Yeah, because she's searching, even after she has the incident where she knows, she kind of realizes who Johnny is. She doesn't let it go. I don't necessarily, like you said, I don't necessarily understand why. I mean, I guess it's the unrequited love thing, or
but if it's unrequited love, then leave your fucking husband and go be with Johnny.
Yeah.
Don't that whole scene where they finally have sex and like her kid's there, and then like they put her kid in the playpen on the porch and they go to the barn and do it, and then Herb is there and he's like playing with Sarah's kid while Johnny and her are like there, and it's like, and the way that they describe it is it's like this one, it's everybody getting what could have been,
right?
Like that is macabre. Like that to me is sadistic and shit. Like it's, everybody is deluding themselves. Herb is deluding himself. Johnny's deluding himself. Sarah's deluding herself. And then that poor fucking child is there all in the middle of all of that, innocent and just being taken advantage of by all those people there.
Right.
His mom is denying his existence by still pursuing Johnny. Johnny's pretending like it's his kid. Herb's pretending like it's his grandkid. And that poor fucking kid has no idea what's going on. Like that's dark. That's just dark. All of it.
Yeah, because there's this sense of they almost wanted to play, like you said, they want to play family for a little bit, just to see what it would have been like, or something like that. That's
so. Let me. I know we've talked about Vera a lot in your reaction to Vera, which is great because this ties into the last question that I had for this portion, which was what at this point we start to see that there is a connection with Vera's unflinching belief that there is a purpose to Johnny's powers, that I start to wonder when I was going through this book, like, I wonder if if Vera has powers of her own, that's what feeds into her misplaced faith.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because it's almost like the person who predicts the end of the world is going to be right at some point.
But the argument is, if you keep just saying the world's going to end, if you say it long enough, it's going to eventually happen, though, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So she's saying that he has some sort of meaning. Well, eventually he's going to find a meaning.
That's I guess that's fair.
Not to dismiss this idea that she could have, because I mean they link it to his traumatic events, but we don't necessarily know that it could be hereditary or.
And see, that's the angle that I'm going for. Is like I feel like that King is trying to justify both sides. There's a supernatural portion to it, and this is also a recurring theme in King's work. This like sense of a larger power. One of the later questions that I have that this really ties to is Johnny's power a result? So I'm kind of skipping ahead because we only have about, I don't know, like 25 minutes left. So is Johnny's power a result of bad luck and evolution? Meaning, because there's the portion of the book where they say the only reason he survived his coma was because he had a head injury previously at some point, which also argues that his injury, that previous head injury, is what tapped into this like power, right? It's alluded to, which gives me this idea that King's trying to scientifically justify Johnny's powers, but then he also has this sense of there is a task. Like it becomes undeniable, and I even feel like Johnny feels this way in his letters, in the epilogue of the book, in the last section of the book, when he's writing to Herb and to Sarah. Where he believes this is his, and like I think he finally buys into what Vera was saying. Like this is what his purpose is. I think he even goes as far as to say it is he didn't leave New Hampshire because of the fire and the situation after the fire. He left because that fire finally like sealed the deal, where he was like, "Yep, I got to kill Stilson. That's what I got to do." You know?
Yeah. And, I think that Vera's like perseverance on this idea of purpose is certainly not foreign to religious upbringing. It's like there's such an emphasis on what the meaning of life is, because there's a great fear, I think, in a lot of people.
Right.
At least the bulk of people, that life is potentially pointless and meaningless. And that's scary if you feel that way and you don't have a way to deal with the fact that meaning in life is the meaning you assign to it, not something that you encounter or is given to you. It's it's your motivation. It's how you approach life. And I think in Vera's mind, all of a sudden this ability to get meaning comes into, or this, what in her mind is a clear way of being meaningful, comes out, and that to her is God. That's a clear sign from God that this is what Johnny's supposed to do, and now he has meaning.
Right.
It's his struggle to be like, well, I don't want this.
Yeah.
This isn't giving me meaning. It might look like meaning to you, but it's not meaning to me, until the whole Stilson thing. And then,
well, and I can even let me back that up even before the Stilson thing. So this ties into the next reading assignment. Do you think that the Castle Rock Strangler situation helps confirm that there is a purpose to Johnny's powers? Do you think that's the reason that or just surrounding that whole situation? Do you think that makes,
because he does something good in his,
or do you think that there is a purpose to it? I mean, because not just because he's doing something good, but let's just think about the sheer odds that put Johnny's as a person with this particular power just happened to be 2 counties over from where this like mass murderer or this like serial killer happens to be. I mean, so like that's my devil's advocate side of it is like,
Sure.
you know, that could help strengthen the case that, I mean, Johnny could have just as easily had these powers in California, which is like on the opposite coast of where the Castle Rock Strangler is happening.
Sure. And not have the ability to easily be presented with this way to utilize his skills or gift or whatever we're going to call it.
If we go to, if we continue on this track of purpose, Twinkie, it going through the book, you can see that, I mean, the case can be made that Johnny is continually forced to suffer. He's almost like a Job. I mean, one could argue, right? Like, it's not enough that he like gets in this car accident. He's got to spend it like 4.5 years in a coma. It's not enough that he spends 4.5 years in a coma. He has to then spend the next 3 years in like rehabilitation and surgery to be able to move again, which the movie totally skirted over all of that shit. All of it.
It just made him walk in a very, very awful way.
No, it cut from the car crash scene to him like laying there awake talking to Dr. Wyzak. Like, what the fuck? Come on, like.
Yeah, they definitely did not need any sort of medical.
Also,
authority.
Vera only had 2 talking scenes, like the scene where she walks into the room and the scene where she dies of the fucking stroke. That's the only times that she talks in that movie. Ugh. So many like.
But the thing, like when he's on the cane and stuff, and he's lurching forward, he says, "I'm walking here." You see, because
which is
walking.
So Twinkie, so he continues to suffer loss. Do you think this is because of his opposition to a quote unquote purpose? Like, if there is a higher power that's trying to steer him towards a purpose and is continually, do you think that this loss that he keeps having to suffer is because he doesn't buy into that purpose yet?
It's interesting. Because he doesn't quite state fairly clearly that the Stilson thing is going to be his Waterloo. Like, he knows this is going to be the end.
I think he knows as soon as he shakes Stilson's hand.
Right.
Which
so
ties to the last question of that section.
Yeah, I think to me, he's kind of going wherever. Well, he certainly makes a decision on the Castle Rock Strangler. And it's the first time I feel like he has the press conference, and that's really a terrible experience. But he really makes a decision in that Castle Rock Strangler. He's going to go and do something and help. Like, maybe this is my purpose.
Yeah.
But there's no indication that there's some sort of like outside force that's making life hard for him simply because he's not playing ball, as it were, with this, with the way things are supposed to be. I never get any indication that that's the case. It's more of circumstances surrounding his ability, which are very supernatural or odd. Just the reaction of the average public is making life challenging for him and making life difficult because they're seeing all the uses that his powers have, and he just views it as a curse and that he doesn't want to do it. But I get no indication of any sort of outside involvement other than, I guess, his mom. I guess you could view that as some sort of conduit from God or.
Well, and I think the reason that I steered towards these questions is because this, again, is a theme that you see. That this is a recurring theme in King's work: purpose versus free will, right? Most of the time, he will land on the purpose side. Like there is a higher power working towards. It is a great example of me, and I highly recommend everybody read it.
I'm sure as hell not watching that movie. Looks terrifying.
You have to. That movie looks so fucking good.
It was fucking terrifying.
Oh,
Did you
so
see the thing where the clown pops out of the water?
Yeah, oh, I saw
no,
it.
dude.
I can't wait. Can't wait.
Fuck no, I'm not watching that.
Oh, you got to.
I feel like that's like a pull quote. Just like,
Yeah.
fuck no, I'm not watching that. Dash Twinkie.
Dash
and
Twinkie.
People go see it.
But this is a recurring theme that you see in King's work a lot, where it's power versus free will, or higher power versus free will, or fate, I guess you could say. And I just
You see a lot of that in The Stand too. Another thing about it, there's a lot of that in The Stand. Just prior.
And all right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about then the vision that he has at the end of that section is where he finally shakes hands with Stillson, which I love in the movie, though. I love where he goes to shake Stillson's hand when the first time he sees him. And as their hands are about to connect, you hear the chink, and it's Stillson putting a button in his hand.
Oh,
so he
he blocks it.
So he blocks that. Like the vision could have happened at that point, but it didn't.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I may have missed that.
Oh man, I loved that. Was just a nice little nuance that was just so awesome. Which the movie's version of Sunny I liked a lot too. Anyways, so at the end of chapter 20, that's when Johnny finally shakes Stillson's hand and he sees his vision. So let's talk about how that parallels with today, and just like, and how I don't know. Like, I feel like there are so many similarities between Stillson and Trump's campaign and style of talking and symbols that they choose. I don't know so we talked about your tweet. Your tweet said, when did you know you were writing about Trump in the Dead Zone, right? So like, just what's your take? Like, as you're reading the book, like, how is it hitting you?
Again, a lot of this book, it's so interesting to me, is informed by my religious upbringing. I'm sure everybody, when they read something, is informed by their previous experiences. But
sure,
I read a quote, and you know what? I may not have read the quote. I may have heard it from. Do you all remember or have class with Professor Weinstein, I guess, depending, at what was then Wayne College? I believe it's a satellite campus.
All of you guys had Weinstein up on this like pedestal, and I came in right behind all of you had him, and I never had him. I never got it.
I didn't either. I didn't get to. I went there, but I didn't have him.
I remember him. I remember seeing him in the halls of Wayne College. I remember him being like a rock star for all of you guys.
Yeah.
And not getting, like, I was about to take humanities, but then I ended up graduating and going and taking them up on main campus.
Right. So, I mean, to kind of put it in perspective, he's at Wayne College, which is in Orrville, Ohio. I mean, just it's
a college that's a high school.
The heart of like conservatism, and he's a liberal Jew.
Yeah.
Who lives in Worcester, who did not pull punches and could just give a fuck if you were upset at him. Not in a mean way. He was just like, this is the information I'm presenting. And you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. But I'm not going to not do something because of, the state of the world around me. But one of the things that I'm going to attribute to him anyway, because why the hell it makes a great story. But I think he was the one that first kind of cued me to the fact of people who talk about the greatness of the past. You need to watch them, because they're not going to tell you the whole story. They're going to pull the pieces that sound great. And we're talking luminaries in history, like Hitler, like these awful people who preyed upon the German mindset to say, look, You got fucked in World War I. Well, the Great War, he would have called it. But in the Great War, I'm going to take you back. We're going to go back before that when we were great, you know. And anybody who takes the past and promotes it to be this all-encompassing wonderment of joy and fantasticness, you're getting sold a bill of goods, because its history is stunningly like it is now, a mix of positive and negative, a mix of good and bad, a mix of uncertainty yet hope. All of those things exist whenever America was great, whatever time frame he's calling that. All of those pieces existed just as they do right now. And Stilson's doing the same thing. He's misrepresenting history. He's selling this past, which is bogus and isn't real. It's not a real past. It's a past generated for people who think that there was a time in history where everybody had jobs and everything was wonderful and marvelous, which never existed. He promises, at least in the movie, he promises jobs to everybody as part of his platform.
They cut in at the end of 100 push-ups.
Yeah.
Who does 100 push-ups? Show me somebody.
You fucking do 100 push-ups. You do Lou Diamond push-ups in the middle of Chicago at 2 a.m. That's what you fucking do.
I probably did 10, but thank you. Push-ups. How do you even know that? You weren't there.
Listen, I know shit. Okay, don't like.
So all of that was.
You're not the only chronologist of our group.
I know. As I was listening to Twinky's story, he was talking about the past, about this. I'm like, are you telling me that the cabin was not a utopia? Because
how dare you
talk about fucking where you were going. That pedestal gets taller the older I get. The cabin.
Yeah, I remember growing up in the church that I grew up in, and again, this informs that if people have this mythical, we're going to return to where, the women actually looked modest.
Yeah.
And the men were men.
Men were men.
Men were men. The women were kind of like men too. No. The men were men. There's just appeal to return to simpler times.
Yeah.
Why can't we just go back to the way things were? The past was so much better than it is now, guys. Look, aren't you scared right now? Don't you feel that dread, like something bad could happen? I can promise you safety and security and the way things were. And I remember that growing up in my life, and Stilson does that masterfully.
Yep.
Through King. So that's how I see him.
Right.
That's very well said.
I think that is spot on. So we're down to 7 minutes.
Until how does I love what it's done doing is how are you we're in the questions? Are you approaching that?
We're in the last 3 questions. So we're going to rapid fire these in the last 7 minutes. You ready? All right.
Rock and roll.
First question. This is a common King thing. In chapters 24 through the epilogue, through the end of the book, he really starts changing his narrative style to a mixed, I call it mixed media. So there's interviews, there's newspaper clippings, and he does this a lot in a lot of his books. He does not stick to just one narrative style because that helps support it as a whole story. It gives it sustenance. It gives it life. If it's more than just, if it's third person omniscient for the whole time, it's not as effective if in addition to the third person omniscient, here's 2 newspaper clippings and an interview that support what the narrator's telling you, So
sure.
What was your reaction to that change? Because I feel like in the Dead Zone, it's really drastic, where it's it's just this normal narrative. And then once it gets to where he's in Arizona or New Mexico or wherever, that's where it's just where it's almost like a police blotter, where it's and then he went and bought a gun, and then he bought a train ticket, and then he went and did this, and then he wrote these letters, and here's what the letters said. And then in the epilogue, you're like, here's the like testimony. So what's your reaction to that like change in narrative style and the incorporation of like the mixed media approach?
My initial reaction when reading it was there's this sense of not really knowing. He's wandering about, and that's found out in the way that King even jumps around. Is there's a wandering about of the story, and then when he feels that purpose for whatever whether it's inside or outside purpose, whether it's external, internal, King, I think, almost portrays that by that like focused. We are on a rail, and we are going from here to the point where he's killed by the Secret Service.
Well, and I think, but here's where that's so awesome is because that's when Johnny finally accepts his fate. Like whether or not that higher power is there, Johnny thinks it is, and then that's when the narrative style switches to this. We're on a rail, and we're just barreling through to this like horrific thing. And it ends up not being as horrific as you think it's going to be. So all right. So next question.
Real quick though, I think the movie does something really interesting, and obviously to create tension, is they use Denny as the little boy.
That was genius.
Which
totally genius.
After I watched, I was like, "Duh! Well, that's brilliant." I mean,
so brilliant.
Whichever screenwriter was like, "Well, yeah, use
especially
his,"
because he, like shakes Stilson's hand, and the next scene is like the end. You like.
Oh yeah, but certainly it just
movie.
The book just like barrels down the track, almost kind of like the movie does the whole time. You know, the movie is very much kind of push you in this almost like CSI, but kind of thrillerish thing.
When you can see to some extent, like especially when they go to Dodd's house, like we were talking about, that seems so overblown, and like she's shooting Dodd's mom is shooting Johnny. I definitely saw in that scene, it's like, oh, I can see how television producers would see this and want to make it into a procedural where they make a crime team out of these people.
Right.
But yeah, so well, that's a kind of like hackneyed. I don't know, not to downplay it or say that's bad, but as an adaptation, that's sort of reductive, formulaic rendering of this more subtle and nuanced and interesting story. But in terms of a narrative device and kind of way of adapting the greater themes of the novel and larger character circles into a smaller story that could be realized in 2 hours, making Johnny's love Sarah's son, who is Sarah's Johnny's lost love, who is now married a politician, who is in the movie aligned with Stilson. And like essentially
another
like
brilliant move. I actually thought a lot of the decisions that they made for the movie were brilliant. Like as far as if you look at it from if you look at it from, we have this book that's 500 pages long and we need to fit it into an hour and 45 minutes. I think a lot of the choices they made were really, really smart.
What we're dancing around is in the end, in the climax, where Johnny thinks that if he assassinates Stilson, it will undo this version of the future that he's seen. And he is unable to actually kill him, to shoot him. But what happens is when he is trying to shoot him, when he's firing off rounds, Stilson reveals his true character by holding up a baby in front of him as a human shield. And in this case, it's his ex-lover Sarah's baby Denny that he holds up, so it better localizes that and it hits home.
Let's end on this. These last two questions, Twinkie, I want to get your answers to, and they're easy ones to answer.
Oh man,
I think I know your answer. What you would answer to at least the first one. The second one is totally up in the air. So the first one is. So is Johnny's power a result of just bad luck in genetics, or is it the result of a higher power what's your take on it? Imposing their will on a helpless Johnny. like a higher power imposing its will on a helpless child.
Partially informed by my own beliefs, obviously, but also just in trying to interpret King's writing. I believe it is just he's a hapless participant in
bad luck and genetics,
the charade of life, right?
Like he had a head injury when a kid that just happened to tap into some portion of the human brain that most of us don't get to access.
Right.
All right, that's it. And I think King presents both of them so that anybody can relate to it at that point. Like either way, you could relate to it. All right, last
movie
question.
tidbit. Well, movie tidbit. I have 3 movie tidbits I'm trying to work in. One of them is movie tidbit is they did film a prologue where they filmed the ice thing. They elected not to use it.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe they could.
They did show that. What caused Johnny's
into his coma. Yeah.
All right. Last question, Twinkie.
Oh man.
If you could go back and kill Hitler, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler,
right? Which they talk about in this movie, right? That's the.
I like the movie's conversation way better because because Chris Walken was like, but you're gonna die. If you go back and you do it and you kill him,
because
you're not going to survive.
The argument is always, at least in the conversations the few conversations I've had about this. I mean, I talk about it all the time at work. The conversation, you guys is always like, well, are you just going to create something worse? If you go back and kill Hitler, what alternate timeline? What are you altering, and does something worse happen in its place? I'm not sure what could be worse than Hitler necessarily, but
I honestly, I want us to jump from this book to 11/22/63 because it's almost the other end of the spectrum of this thought right here. Like, would you go back and kill Hitler?
Yeah. But I must think you have to say yes, because you know what you have in Hitler. You don't know what the alternate timeline is. Don't you have to say
better?
Don't you have to say I'll take my chances at least? Yeah. Like, if 10 less people are killed, if one less person is killed, haven't you done the right thing? I
think the dead zone is young Stephen King, and 11/22/63 is like cynical adult Stephen King answering that question.
That's interesting.
Answering that question.
What is that novel? Like, what's the premise of that novel? Is the title even significant to
11/22/63 is the assassination of Kennedy. So the whole point of the book is a man finds a wormhole that allows him to travel back to like 1950 something. And he lives through that era so that he can try to prevent the assassination of JFK.
Have you guys already answered that question on the previous podcast? I would just be curious what your thoughts were. Would you go back, each of you? Like, what are you?
I think that Craig's answer in the book, where it's like I would just have to do it because otherwise I'd be worried those 6 million people would haunt me. I mean, if you're given 6 million people versus one person, I'm a math teacher, like that, hands down, no problem. Like, where's the gun? Like, not like I would make every effort to go and and take Hitler out. I mean, and I hadn't even considered it from that perspective that you offered, where we know Hitler's outcome. Like, what could be worse than 6 million people being killed, like euthanized, Yeah,
if it had access to the multiverse, which posits that there are alternate universes, each with varying timelines,
which I
we could find out. We could access what happens without Hitler, because there's a universe right now that exists according to the multiverse theory, wherein Hitler doesn't rise to power.
Are we talking about like a timeline and where Bruce Wayne's parents aren't killed? Is that the foundation of this?
Here's mind blowing. If you can just accept the fact that the universe is infinite, which that's an easy, in my opinion, that's an easy one to swallow. The universe is infinite, right?
But Jesus.
No.
But aliens.
I'll take Jesus, because here's the thing. if you can accept that the universe is infinite, there's, you know what? If it's infinite, when you apply infinity to anything, there is a world where Jesus existed and everything, all of his miracles happened. There's a world where none of it happened.
Yeah, it's called Rittman, Ohio's Apostolic Church.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Long Walk, Short Drink, episode 27. Joining us has been our great friend Twinkie. Oh, man.
It's been a great time. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the talk. Thanks for the book club work.
Oh, geez, man. I'm so glad that you guys had a good time with it. Dave, you got anything?
I'm gonna edit this out, but I just want you guys to know these two things because they're fun.
Oh no!
One, about the two things from the movie, just like tidbits that are interesting. One, again, I'm gonna edit it out, so don't worry about it. The editor said that there was 3 levels of performance that Walken gave for each take.
Whoa!
So I think that's how he arrived at that whole thing. Like, he would give like this level of performance. And then the next take, he'd give a second level performance. Then the third, he'd be like, "Your house is on fire!" And it was up to the director or editor or whatever to choose. So I found that very interesting in terms of like an approach of an actor, etc. So I think that's how we arrived at something.
Like, so there's a casual reference to the ice breaking somewhere. Like Walken's like casually mentioning the ice might break, you know.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's like take 1, take 2. It's like, hey,
it's gonna break.
And then that's like take 3. That was very interesting to me, that idea of that 3-take thing as a film actor, especially coming from his.
Well, they must have used takes 1 and 2 for up to 1 hour and 19 minutes.
Yeah.
And then at 1 hour and 19, they're just like, take fucking 3.
Yeah.
The ice!
Yeah.
It's gonna break!
We're gonna amp this thing up, man. We're going all in.
Yeah. It's so interesting how that works. And then the other one was that Walken asked Cronenberg to take a .44 Magnum and fire it off for the flash, for like when he was supposed to react to shaking someone's hand or something.
Oh no, that makes sense. Yeah.
That he would be truly like jolted.
Startled. Yeah.
So that was interesting to me to picture like Cronenberg firing a .44 Magnum in the air, and then when you see his reaction,
this conversation needs to be at the bumper. Like, put this.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Although Walken does a good job of looking startled a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that probably just kind of added to his startledness.
Right. But those are the main like points from the behind the scenes stuff that I found that it was really particularly interesting. There's other small stuff too, like literally Walken got the Sarah character hired because she knew him as a kid. Like she knew him as someone called Ronnie Walken, and he advocated for her being hired.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You reminded me a lot of the woman from Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know that's not the same actress.
Yeah.
But it reminded me a lot of her. Like,
yeah, and she's reminiscent of Margot Kidder. The woman in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Like all 3 of those women are all very similar to each other.
It's like an early 80s archetype of femininity. Sirs, this was deeply satisfying.
Absolutely. Oh man, so satisfying. I am really drunk right now. And,
did you make it through the whole what was it, Ukrainian line, or what was it? I wanted to put that in the description.
Oh man, are we still live? Do you want to unlive YouTube?
That's a great point.
Let's not the broadcast. Let's do that. Bye, YouTube.
Goodbye, you fucks.